And we're going to kick off the list with the legend of the Hookman. Now, supposedly on Pond Run Road in the village of New Richmond, there once lived a doctor and his wife. They had a son who was mentally disturbed, and these two were ashamed of him and opted to keep him out of the public eye. This meant chaining him up in the basement whenever people were over, or when they just didn't want him in their presence. One night, there was a terrible storm. A bolt of lightning hit their house and a fire started. When authorities arrived on the scene, they found the parents burnt to death, which was the perfect outcome for despicable people like that. But the boy, who had been chained up in the basement at the time, was nowhere to be found, aside from his hand, still chained up to the wall in the basement. So where did he go? Well, legends started to spread that over the years he grew up stalking through the woods, stealing from homes nearby, brandishing a hook for a hand, and brutalizing innocent people, especially young couples. The urban legend of the Hookman is one you see all over the place. This is just Ohio's specific version of the tale. If you're liking our channel so far, by the way, if you're new here, why not hit that subscribe button? You got nothing to lose. It's free. We got awesome videos coming at you on the daily. All right, next on the list we have Munchkinland. This urban legend of Munchkinland, also known as Tiny Town in Cincinnati, Ohio, centers around a peculiar area near Rumpke Landfill. Here, a cluster of small houses and buildings allegedly housed a community of little people. According to local lore, these tiny inhabitants were notorious for hurling rocks at passing cars, attempting to deter any intruders. Numerous tales circulated about unsuspecting individuals who stopped their cars in the vicinity, only to find themselves confronted by enraged little folk armed with rocks and ready to defend their territory. As to where these little people are said to have come from, the legend goes that they were retired circus performers. Now, there actually was a collection of small structures in this area. They've recently been torn down, I believe. But as to why they were there are lots of different stories, including, of course, that they were built by the little retired circus performers. A more likely explanation, though, is that they had been built by a farmer on the land who had decided he wanted to start running hay rides, and that he built the houses on the property. But I think it's still a bit murky as to how they got there. Number 8, the Peninsula Python. So this incident involved the discovery of a large python in the Cuyahoga Valley National Park in Peninsula, Ohio in the summer of 1944. The question obviously was, how did this python, native to tropical regions, end up in a park in Ohio? For a while, authorities didn't even think the reports were real, or at least they didn't think people were really seeing what they thought they were seeing. A massive snake stalking the area became something of an urban legend at the time, but turns out that there indeed was a python, and as to how it got there, some believed that it had been a pet released by its owner, others speculated it had escaped from a traveling circus or a private exotic animal collection. It's still a bit of a mystery to this day as to how it really got there. The python was never even found. It likely died during the winter, but some say it's still stalking its way out there.
Coming in at number 7, we have the multiverse theory. Now, I want to start off by saying that this theory is still very unproven. It is all speculation. There are some microwave signals that come from the universe, and some scientists think this is evidence of other universes, but it's not like gravity, where we know it's real, we just don't know why. The multiverse theory is that, very much like the infinite expanding universe, there's also an infinite number of other universes that have all different variations of reality, which is pretty much the backbone of the show Rick and Morty. This could mean that there is a universe where you are the hot chick, so feel good about yourself. Now, even if this theory was true, it wouldn't be easy to go visit these places. Beyond the fact that we would have to build something to open a gate to these worlds, the laws of physics that bind these other universes together could be so different from our own that going to them would literally tear your atoms apart. At number 6, we have, why does time flow forward? Well, what is perceived as forward, you feel me? I mean, when I first was reading about this, I thought, well, because it does. It can only move one way. But why is the ultimate question. I think that's why I never became a scientist, because I never think to ask these questions. Newton wrote, all motion may be accelerated or slowed, but the flowing of absolute time is not liable to any change. And it's even in question, how could you measure the flow of time? I mean, time could stop moving right now and then start moving the very next second, and we would never be able to tell the difference because our lives continue no matter what. So maybe this is a question that doesn't need to be asked, but I'm glad that we're asking it, because one day I would like to go back in time so I can go to Woodstock. Coming in at number 5, we have how does gravity work? I mean, if you ask a flat earther, they'll tell you that gravity is fake and we're all held down by wind or some nonsense, but thankfully over here at Most Amazing Top 10, we don't use flat earth science. Now we do know the effects of gravity. It basically pulls things in, and the more mass something has, the stronger its gravitational pull. Like the moon is smaller than the earth, so if you go up there and jump around, you will feel like you should be playing for the NBA. Gravity even has a massive effect on how the planet acts. The moon's gravitational pull will pull in and out the tides, but why? Why does this happen? Coming in at number 4, we have why do magnets exist? Now we do know a lot about magnets. I mean, you can give them to a child and they can easily figure out how the opposite forces of a magnet will connect to one another and the same sides reject each other, like the majority of people I message on dating apps. We know that there are magnetic poles on each side of the planet, and we know that the electromagnetic force is one of the largest forces in the universe. But we are still left scratching our heads when it comes to the terms as to why they are here. Magnetism is one of the great underlying forces of the universe, and unlocking this one could answer a ton of questions about existence itself. Coming in at number 3, we have the placebo effect. The mind is a very powerful thing, and if you ever needed evidence, just look at the countless studies on the placebo effect. One of the craziest studies was one done on arthroscopic knee surgery. This is a common practice in older people with knee problems. A very simple surgery will be performed where 2 incisions are made on each side of the knee, and a doctor goes in and cleans out fluid and cleans up cartilage in the knee. Now the purpose of this study was to find out what was more effective, the cleaning of the cartilage or the cleaning of the fluid. In order for the study to be successful, there was a control group that was given a mock surgery without their knowledge. Slits were made on the side of the knee, and even a fake surgery was shown on a screen for the patient to watch, but no actual surgery was performed. And the control group recovered just as well, and in some cases better, than the people who had the surgery. So in other words, the mind repaired the body somehow. Now how this happens, we don't know, but it goes to show how much your thoughts can have influence over your body. Coming in at number 2, we have dark energy. Now it sounds like we're going to go into a Marvel movie or something. What on earth is dark energy? Well, have you been paying attention to the list so far? We don't know what it is. And when I say we, I mean people much smarter than me. But we speculate that dark energy is what makes up the other 70% of the universe. Now, since the universe is constantly expanding like my gut after I refuse to listen to my own body's signals to stop eating, there needs to be some explanation as to why this is happening. The speculation is that dark energy is the cause of this never-ending growth spurt. Dark energy could be created by quantum particles smashing into each other all over the known universe. This is happening so many times that it would take a good portion of this video just to count all the zeros. But these collisions create energy, which in turn is pushing the universe apart. The question is, how far can the known universe get pushed? Could it get pushed to the point where reality is ripped apart? I don't know, I'm not smart enough to answer this. And coming in for the number 1 spot is quantum entanglement. Now it sounds like I'm just making this stuff up, but I promise you I am not. This is very real. Quantum entanglement is when 2 particles that are nowhere near each other will start to mirror each other. Now why is this strange? Well, because it was long thought that only something within a particle's environment could affect it. On top of this, the only way that particles could be doing this is if they were communicating in some way to one another, like they were hooked up on WhatsApp or something. But here's the thing, these particles are so far apart and moving together so perfectly that the speed in which they would have to be sending information breaks the laws of physics. The information would have to move faster than the speed of light, which was thought to be impossible. Now, how is this happening? Once again, we have no idea, but it begs the question, will we one day be able to move faster than the speed of light? I hope so, because that would be cool. Alright everyone, that has been our list, and as promised, I'm going to be doing some more pet shoutouts. Remember, if you want me to shout out your pet, you can hit me up on Instagram. I pick new pets every day, so if you don't get picked one day, you can message back another day. If it takes me a little while to get back to you, I'm very sorry. I have a lot of these to do. I usually pick who messaged last, so you can just message me again and again and again if you want. And without taking any longer, let's shout out some pets. First up, we have Hooch, who is one of the cutest little Mastiff puppies I have ever seen. Next, we have a golden retriever as one of the biggest smiles I've ever seen. Then we have Pirelli, who's one of the most spoiled cats with all those toys and that super cute bow tie. After that, we have Milo, who's looking super cute with that big ol' head. And to close it out, we have Jeffrey, who is all wrapped up in the cutest blanket ever.
Starting off this countdown, we have Yuki Onishi. Her case is often referred to as the girl that vanished into thin air, and you'll understand why in a second. On April 29th, 2005, 5-year-old Yuki was out celebrating Greenery Day with her mother. Greenery Day is a national holiday in Japan meant to appreciate nature. On this day, people often go and dig up bamboo shoots as part of the celebration, and that's what Yuki and her mom were doing along with 60 other people. After Yuki showed her mom the first shoot that she found, she ran off to find more. 20 minutes later, her mom realized that Yuki wasn't with all the other diggers. That's when the search began. When they couldn't find her, the police were called and police dogs came to sniff out the scene. This is where it gets strange. All the police dogs followed her scent to the middle of the forest where her scent just stopped. This made it seem like she vanished into thin air from that spot. Sadly, Yuki has never been found and we don't know what happened to her or where she disappeared to. Moving on to number 9, we have the Pyramid Mystery. If you're a fan of the lost city of Atlantis, then this might be the mystery for you. There is a city that lies sunken underwater just off the coast of the Japanese island Yonaguni. Many believe that the city is around 5,000 years old. There are complete pyramids, ruins of castles, structures etched with faces, and rock sculptures that look like animals, all underwater. It's theorized that a terrible earthquake caused the city to be engulfed by water, but to this day, we don't know the true origins of this mysterious underwater city. Moving on at number 8, we have the Man with 21 Faces. In the 1980s in Japan, a group who called themselves the Mystery Man with 21 Faces stocked supermarkets with cyanide-filled candy. It all started when they kidnapped Katsuhisa Izaki, the president of a major company that was famous for selling sweets. They kidnapped him from his home and demanded a ransom of 1 billion yen. Thankfully, he escaped. But that was just the beginning. They continued by targeting other companies and by putting cyanide-laced chocolates on supermarket shelves. They also wrote several taunting letters to the police. To this day, no one knows who they were. The case was closed in February of 2000 and no arrests were ever made.
Coming into number 7, we have Stonehenge. We're taking it back to my home country of England, but what is going on? What's going on with Stonehenge? I don't know. Stonehenge sits pretty in the Salisbury Plains in England and was laid out around 4,000 years ago at a time where transporting and lifting 50-ton sarsen sandstone and bluestone rocks was legitimately beyond human capability. Aside from the mystery of how it was built, we also don't know what it was used for. The main theory is that it was for some kind of religious worship, although there were far more cosmic suggestions. The structure is aligned with various celestial objects and has been the focus of pagan celebration, especially around the summer solstice. Archaeological digs have also suggested that a breed of giant cows were used either to assist in the construction or, were just chilling there, present, mooing. Cows are just so great. Does anyone ever just stop and think about cows? I love cows, even ancient giant cows. Cows! Moo. Recently discovered underneath the stone structure were 17 further mysterious ancient monuments, which just adds more mystery to the pile of mystery. It's a mystery sundae with a side of mystery and a mystery cherry on top. Coming in at number 6, we have the Zodiac Killer. The Zodiac Killer is one of the most elusive serial killers in modern American history. The mystery male murdered at least 5 people, but claims to be behind the deaths of up to 37 people. Despite no arrests, the California Department of Justice has maintained an open case file on the Zodiac murders since 1969. The Zodiac Killer murdered 3 women and 1 man, with 2 other male victims surviving. The killer claimed to have killed many people in the infamous ciphers, which were sent to the police. The Zodiac Killer was given their name as a result of the cryptograms sent to the police, which were a mystery unto themselves. One of those has definitely been solved, but the others not so much. The last known Zodiac murder was in the 1970s, so in theory the killer could be dead, or they could be living out their days among us, which is terrifying. So yeah, despite descriptions of the male killer at the time and many sketches of him, the case is unsolved and the murderer is, or was, at large. This is so mysterious. At number 5, we have the Texarkana Moonlight Murders. Who was the Phantom Slayer? Honestly, we don't know. The Texarkana Moonlight Murders were a series of very grisly killings that took place in Texas in the spring of 1946. 8 people were attacked over 10 weeks, with 5 of the victims succumbing to their injuries. A pair of survivors claimed that the killer was wearing a white pillowcase with eye holes cut out over his head. What a ghoul. All of the attacks happened to couples and took place on weekends. The murders sent the town of Texarkana into absolute panic, as I'm sure you can imagine. City inhabitants locked themselves indoors with guns, and it was kind of like scenes from the Purge out there. The Texas Rangers were even called in, and people started arming up and taking to the streets to try and catch the killer, but the assailant never struck again. At the time, the Texas Ranger captain saw that the criminal killer was, and I quote, a shrewd criminal who left no stone unturned to conceal his identity and activities. He was never caught. Coming into number 4, we have the dark deaths of Overton Bridge. I've never heard of a dog taking their own life until now, but it seems that there's a bridge in Dumbarton in beautiful, beautiful Scotland which is A, haunted, and B, has claimed the lives of many dogs. This makes me feel really sad. It seems that since the 1960s, nearly 100 dogs have leapt to their death from the bridge, falling 50 feet into jagged rock below. Why the dogs have jumped? We just don't know. Reportedly, they freak out and they leap. The Scottish Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals has sent teams to investigate, but nobody has yet solved the mystery. While the dog deaths are the main issue, it seems that a man inexplicably threw his baby from the bridge in 1994. Now dogs are firmly required to be on leashes. Coming into number 3, we have the Phoenix Lights. What was going on in the skies of Arizona, Nevada, and Sonora? In 1997, thousands of people saw what they thought were UFOs in the sky between 7:30 and 10 p.m. at night. Thousands of people reported triangular formations of lights passing over the southern states and in North Mexico. A sizable number of people also reported actually seeing a UFO. One witness, who didn't want to be named, which I kind of understand, said, "It was totally silent. I've never seen anything close to the colors from the exhaust that propelled that thing. It was as big as downtown Prescott and completely blocked out the stars." Now, the shared phenomenon actually had a lot of credible witnesses, including the Arizona Governor Fife Symington. While the original event happened 22 years ago, possible reoccurrences have happened in 2007 and 2008. Coming into number 2, we have the case of D.B. Cooper. On November the 24th, 1971, the eve of Thanksgiving, a man using the name Dan Cooper successfully hijacked a Boeing 727 plane in the airspace between Portland and Seattle. The man boarded the plane as a passenger and ordered a bourbon and soda. After takeoff, he handed a note to a flight attendant, but she didn't read it, assuming it was his phone number. Creepy. He then leant over to her and said, "Miss, you'd better look at that note. I have a bomb." Not what you want to hear. Long story short, he demanded and successfully extorted $200,000 in ransom, over $1 million in today's currency. He then parachuted out of the plane, jettisoned, gone. Nobody knew whether he landed alive or where he was at all. There was an extensive manhunt from the FBI, but the man's real identity has never been solved. Numerous theories were circulated. The serial number on the cash he stole were also released and searched for, but again, no trace was found. As of 2016, the investigation has been suspended and remains one of America's greatest unsolved mysteries. Finally, coming into number 1, a mystery of our age, we have the disappearance of flight MH370. Malaysian Airlines 370 disappeared on March 8, 2014, flying from Kuala Lumpur Airport to Beijing in China. The aircraft last made contact with air traffic control when it was over the South China Sea, less than an hour after takeoff, before then completely disappearing from their radar. The last words from Captain Shah were, "Good night, Malaysian 370. The plane was still tracked on military radar, which suggested that actually it deviated to cross the Malay Peninsula, until finally disappearing from radar altogether over the Andaman Sea. Oddly, no phone calls of distress or signals were sent out or anything like that. No word. Silence. The black box could have shed light on what happened, but it was never found. neither was the plane or its wreckage, despite millions of dollars being spent on finding it. So what happened? Alien abduction? ISIS abduction? It simply disappeared into a parallel universe? We just don't know. Do you guys have any answers to these mysteries? And again, don't forget to let me know what the weirdest thing that's ever happened to you is.
At number 10 is the Axemen of New Orleans. In the annals of American crime, one chilling tale that sends shivers down your spine is the Axemen of New Orleans. This elusive and malevolent figure terrorized the city during a horrifying spree that left a trail of gruesome unaliving. The Axemen's modus of operandi was brutal as it was perplexing, breaking into homes, wielding an axe or razor, and butchering his victims. What's truly unsettling is that these unalivings don't appear to have any clear motive. The victims were predominantly Italian immigrants or Italian Americans, sparking theories of ethnic hatred. But the mystery deepens when some suggest that the Axeman may have just been a sadistic fiend who specifically targeted women. And here's where it gets truly bizarre. There's even a theory that he eliminated to promote jazz music. What? A letter attributed to the Axeman claimed that he'd spare anyone with a jazz band playing in their home on a specific night. Are you serious? And New Orleans heeded that call. Jazz echoed throughout the city, and that night no one fell victim to the Axeman's gruesome acts. What? To this day, the identity of the Axeman remains unsolved. At number 9 is the Cleveland Torso Unaliver. Active between 1935 and 1938, this unidentified serial killer left a trail of grisly unalivings in their wake. Officially, they claimed about a dozen victims, but there could be way more. What makes this case even more unsettling is the gruesome way the unaliver operated. They beheaded and often dismembered their victims, and sometimes even severed torsos and appendages. Most of the male victims were castrated. The cause of the unaliving in many cases was the horrific dismembering itself, meaning that the people were alive as it was happening. Oh lord. The victims were often drifters, folks who lived on the fringes of society during the Great Depression. Their identities were hard to establish, which was a common theme for this enigma. Forensic science in the era was far from what it is today, making it even more challenging to identify the victims, especially since the heads were often missing. But here's the twist. The Cleveland Torso Unaliver had the audacity to taunt law enforcement. They sent postcards and even placed remains where the authorities couldn't miss them, right in front of Elliot Ness's office. Ness, who was famous for taking on Al Capone and led the Untouchables, couldn't crack this case. To this day, the identity of the Cleveland Torso Unaliver remains a haunting mystery. If you're enjoying this video so far, you can support the channel by pressing like, subscribing to Most Amazing, and ringing that notification bell. At number 8 is the Zodiac Unaliver. This unidentified serial unaliver operated in the late 1960s, plunging Northern California into a state of fear and panic. What sets this case apart is its brazen nature as the unaliver's penchant for taunting the media and authorities. He struck in various locations, targeting young couples and even a lone cab driver. But here's the truly unsettling part. The Zodiac claimed to have unalived over 37 people, leaving a trail of cryptic letters, some containing still unsolved ciphers. Only one of these ciphers was cracked in 2020. It's a real-life puzzle that the world is desperately trying to solve. Though Arthur Lee Allen, a former teacher and convicted offender, was named as a suspect, the case remains unsolved. The Zodiac's eerie ability to vanish into obscurity has made it an eerie mystery, with investigations still open to this day. Will we ever unmask the infamous Zodiac? Only time will tell.
Making our way down the list at number 7, we have the chain suicides. Okay, this one is a super mysterious case. Between June and July of 1992, 5 people all committed suicide in Kumatori, Osaka. 3 of the people were friends, and apparently several months prior to their death, 2 of their other friends died in what was deemed as accidental deaths. All 7 of these deaths happened within 0.7 miles from each other. Now, what's weird is how the deaths look like staged suicides. One person was hanging from a tree, but police couldn't find what the person stood on to reach the tree. And then one girl had a stab wound to the neck and chest, which police say is odd. Lastly, some of these victims all reported that they were being stalked prior to their death. Although we don't know who committed these crimes or why, it seems like the group of friends were targeted and then killed. In our 6th spot, we have Body in the Bag. On April 21st, 1996, a group of students were headed home from school when they saw a bag in a bamboo grove. They had seen the bag there before. In fact, it was said to have been there for about a month. They decided to finally see what's inside. When they poked it with a stick, a human hand fell out of it. The bag had the remains of a middle-aged man shoved into it. He had bruises all over his waist and some of his teeth were missing. Police were unable to identify the man or figure out what happened to him. To this day, police keep a sign near the area where the man's body was found, with hopes that someone will be able to identify him. We are now at our 5th and halfway mark with the Tsunami family murder. On April 28, 1995, at around 2:30 a.m., the house belonging to 70-year-old Haru Heiko and 67-year-old Midori Tsunami was set on fire. Police later found their bodies on the first floor. They were both decapitated. Haruki had a knife in his stomach and Midori had stab marks all over her body. What sucks is that the fire destroyed most of the evidence in the house, but it's said that the killer stayed in the house for at least 5 hours after they killed them. Police still don't know who committed this crime, and after years of searching, they still haven't been able to locate the couple's heads. Coming in at number 4, we have Yoko Yoshida. On September 29th, 2000, a worker at a Tokyo apartment complained to management about a bad odor coming from one of the apartments. When they went inside, 28-year-old Yoko Yoshida was found dead laying on her bed. Now, Yoko was a well-known manga artist. Autopsy reports claim that she had been strangled to death and had been laying there for 10 days or more before they found her. What's odd about her case is that 3 million yen was found in her wallet. Police believe that Yoko knew who her killer was. Maybe she was killed out of jealousy because of her success. Another theory is that since she was a well-known manga artist, that she was killed by a crazed fan, but we still don't truly know. In our 3rd spot, we have the 42nd disappearance. On March 7th, 1989, 4-year-old Shinya Matsuka was said to be kidnapped from her front lawn. Shinya and her family were returning home from a walk. She was outside on the front yard alone for about 40 seconds while her parents carried her younger sibling inside. When they returned, she was gone. It all happened so fast. Their life completely changed in that 40 seconds. Over the years, people have claimed to have seen her, but police have made nothing of these leads. This remains one of the most mysterious cases in Japan. In our 2nd spot, we have the money heist. On December 10th, 1968, a man dressed as a police officer managed to successfully steal more than 294 million yen. So on this day, a car belonging to a bank was transporting that money to another location. That's when a man dressed as a police officer stopped the truck. He then told the workers that their branch manager's home was just blown up, and he had reason to believe that this truck was rigged with explosives as well. The police officer crawled under the vehicle to search for a bomb, and he set off a flare that caused smoke and flames to emerge under the vehicle. The workers panicked and backed away, thinking that the car was going to explode. This allowed the officer to hop into the car and drive away with the money. Police had no suspects, but it's thought that he was a corrupt cop or son of a cop. But these are just theories. They were never able to catch this man. In December of 1975, the statute of limitations for the case passed. So even if a man did come forward admitting to the crime, they wouldn't be able to arrest him for it. And in our number 1 spot, we have the Miyazawa family massacre. On December 30th, 2000, the Miyazawa family, consisting of Miyakio, Yasuko, and their children, Nina and Ri, were all stabbed or strangled to death. It's said that the killer entered their home through the upstairs window. On December 31st, Yasuko's mother visited the home and found her daughter, along with her family, dead. However, the killer has never been identified. Now, this case is truly frustrating. There was so much evidence and DNA left behind by the killer, yet they were still never able to catch him. Apparently, the killer stayed in the house several hours after killing the family. He used the bathroom and didn't flush the toilet. He ate their food from the kitchen and used their computer and even left behind his clothes. But still, he was never caught. And police officers don't even know why he killed the family in the first place. But there are a couple of theories. One is that they were killed by a motorcycle game when Mikio apparently told them off for being too loud several days before. Another theory is that they were killed by a serial killer that would use Japan's train service to get around and commit different crimes. And the last theory is that they were killed by an American soldier. Sadly, to this day, we truly don't know who the monster behind this ruthless crime is.
Coming into number 10, we have Where is Cynthia? This is a very bizarre missing persons case that was also featured on US TV show Unsolved Mysteries mysteries. Cynthia Anderson was a legal secretary from Ohio in 1980. The 20-year-old loved crime and romance novels, but began having a reoccurring dream that an intruder entered her home. She told her mother about it, but she didn't think too much of it until she started receiving weird phone calls at work. Her employers even went as far as to have an emergency buzzer installed on her desk. On the morning of August 4th, 1981, she wasn't at work, but her car was in the car park. On her desk was a novel that she was reading, but the page was open on a passage that detailed an abduction. A month later, the local police started getting weird calls saying that Cynthia was being held in a basement, but wouldn't give any further detail. To this day, she's never been found, and that case is cold. Coming into number 9, we have Who Shot Tupac? But like, who? Tupac Shakur was one of the most famous rappers in the world when he was killed in Las Vegas in September 1996, nearly 23 years ago to the day. He was just 25 years old when he was gunned down in Vegas, having seen Mike Tyson and Frank Bruno fight, which must have been epic. As Tupac and his entourage stopped at a red light in the Flamenco Road and Koval Lane area, he was shot 4 times. He died 6 days later and was not in a state to identify his killer. Earlier that night, it was reported that the rapper had beef with the street gang the Crips. They could have had something to do with it, we'll just never know. A witness came forward, but then they were murdered in New Jersey, thousands of miles away, before they could even submit to further police questioning and identify a suspect. Of course, there are people out there that still believe Tupac is alive and living under a new identity. Perhaps we'll never know. Coming into number 8, we have the Children of Hamelin. So you guys may have heard of the Pied Piper, a little fairy tale with a pretty key moral at the end of it. Pay your bills, if not a bohemian musician will steal your kids. Right? Well, it turns out that there is more than just a lesson to this story. There is actually an 800-year-old unsolved mystery. You see, the Pied Piper of Hamelin was actually a real man, a piper dressed in exuberant clothing who turned up in Lower Saxony in the village of Saxon itself in 1284. According to church records, he did steal 130 children from the town who were never seen or heard from again. They were simply spirited away. But were they? We just don't know.
At number 7, we have Gore Orphanage. Light of Hope Orphanage was established in 1902. It was run by a religious zealot. One day the building caught fire, and the young ones inside all perished in the flames, the cries for help being unheard. The question was, how did the fire start? Well, some say it was an accident, maybe one of the orphans dropped a lamp, but then there's the legend of Old Man Gore, the cruel, sadistic man who ran the facility. In reality, the man's name was Johann Sprunger. He ran the orphanage with his wife Katerina. It was actually a former orphanage they ran that caught on fire. It was true that they were cruel though. Orphans attempted escaping from the institution on a number of occasions. There was also a fire in an elementary school in the nearby town of Collinwood where 176 young people died. So most likely these two real-life incidents were combined and kind of formed this urban legend that is Gore Orphanage. Next on the list, we have the disappearance of Brian Schaefer. In 2006, Brian Schaefer, a medical student at Ohio State University, completely vanished. On the night of March 31st, Schaefer went out with friends to the Ugly Tuna Saloona, a bar near the campus in Columbus. Surveillance footage captured him entering the bar, but never showed him actually leaving. When his friends realized he was missing, they figured he'd gone home, but he hadn't. And surveillance footage from the bar showed footage of Brian speaking with 2 women outside the bar just before 2 a.m. His friends had already left at this point. Then he went back inside and that was it. No trace of him after that. And here's the thing, the bar only had one entrance, monitored by surveillance cameras, which didn't record Brian leaving. On top of that, there were no signs of foul play in his apartment. Over the years, there's been lots of speculation as to what happened here, but one theory is that he voluntarily disappeared and is alive, hopefully anyway, living with a new identity. At our number 5 spot, we have Amy. On Lick Road, just outside of Cincinnati, a terrible incident is said to have taken place. A woman named Amy lost her life at the hands of someone, but the perpetrator was never found. The prevailing theory is that her boyfriend did it though. As the years passed, tales of Amy's ghost haunting Lick Road began to spread, making the ghost of Amy one of the most prominent urban legends in Ohio. Supposedly, there are a couple ways to experience the ghost of Amy. One legend goes that if you flick your headlights onto the sign as you're Turning on to Lick Road at night, you can see the name Amy briefly flash on the sign. Another goes that if you park your car at the cul-de-sac facing the woods, then flash your headlights 3 times, your windows will start to fog up with the word help being written in the condensation. Some nightly visitors have claimed to see the ghostly figure of Amy standing at the edge of the forest. Others claim to hear disembodied footsteps behind them as they make their way across the bridge. Next up, we have Satan's Hollow. In Cincinnati, there is a famous drainage tunnel, a tunnel with a very dark history. Strange and ominous things are said to have happened there. Satanic rituals and disappearances supposedly plague the tunnel, and one story goes that during one of these rituals, a portal to the underworld was accidentally opened. This has led to a number of locals believing this series of interconnected tunnels are actually a portal to hell itself now. People claim to hear strange noises coming from its depths and have even witnessed a shadowy figure known as the Shadow Man, a demonic entity who stalks the tunnel at night. The Werewolf of Defiance. So in the summer of 1972, the small town of Defiance, Ohio was rocked by a series of bizarre and terrifying encounters with what locals would describe as the Werewolf of Defiance. First reported sighting occurred when 2 railroad workers, Ted Davis and Tom Jones, were laboring on the Norfolk and Western Railway. Ted Davis, busy with his work, suddenly looked up to witness something completely unexplainable. A large wolf-like creature clutching a wooden board in its paws. The creature then just whacked Ted on the shoulder with the board before vanishing into the nearby bushes. I like the imagery of that. Just a werewolf come walking out. Bam! All right, goodbye. Anyway, 5 days later, Ted and Tom returned to work, hoping that the strange encounter was just a one-time event. But unfortunately, they spotted this pesky werewolf again. Luckily, it was much further away this time, and they just booked it out of there. They reported the incidents to the local police, and before long, this wave of similar reports flooded in from various parts of Defiance. More and more residents claimed to have encountered a wolf-man-like creature. People were scared to go outside. Like, nobody wants to be gored by a massive-sized wolf person. The sightings, did trail off, but the Wolfman of Defiance has remained a legend of Ohio ever since. In its second place, we have the Crosswick Monster. This incident took place in 1982 and has become a prominent tale in Ohio's cryptid folklore. According to this story, 2 young boys, Ed and Joe Lynch, encountered a terrifying creature in a field. They heard peculiar noises coming from the tall grass, and before they could react, a massive 4-legged lizard-like beast emerged. The creature swiftly approached them, grabbing 13-year-old Ed in its jaws and began dragging him towards a hollowed-out tree. Fortunately, though, the boys' screams caught the attention of 3 nearby men who rushed in to help. They managed to rescue Ed, but he sustained some pretty severe injuries. In response to this initial attack, a group of 60 men armed themselves with axes and clubs, and I'm imagining torches, and they formed a posse to hunt down this creature. They managed to catch up with it, and at one point it stood up on its hind legs. The chase led them to a hill of rocks where the creature vanished into a hole, never to be seen again. The story was written up in the local paper at the time, and it's since grown to be a staple of Ohio's folklore. Just what the hell was the thing that they saw that day? And finally, at our number 1 spot, we have the Circleville Rider. The Circleville letters case, which began in 1976 in Circleville, Ohio. Is it Circleville or Circleville? Let me know in the comments. Anyway, it's still one of the most perplexing unsolved mysteries in the state. It all began with these anonymous, threatening letters sent to numerous residents. The letters contained detailed, personal information about the recipients' lives, leading to this fear and paranoia throughout the community. The mysterious writer knew intimate details about the victims' private lives and warned them to cease certain behaviors. One of the primary recipients, Mary Gillespie, was particularly targeted. The sender claimed she had been having an affair, which Mary insisted was not true, and the situation escalated when Mary's husband, Ron Gillespie, received a letter warning him that he would be unalived. The case took a tragic turn when Ron Gillespie was found dead in his crashed car. His death was ruled an accident, but many suspected foul play. The letters persisted even after Ron's death, leaving the town baffled about the identity of the sender. Several theories emerged, including suspicions about a local school superintendent and Mary's brother-in-law, but no conclusive evidence was ever found, leaving the case unsolved. This incident has inspired numerous legends and conspiracy theories. Stories have spread about the letters having been written by some sort of vengeful ghost or spirit haunting the town, even.
Starting us off at number 10 is the Devil's Bible, also known as the Codex Gigas. Back in the 13th century, there was a monk who was sentenced to be walled up alive because he broke his sacred vows. Obviously, this guy wasn't a fan of dying, so what did he do? He promised the monastery that if they let him live, he would write a book that would contain all human knowledge in a day. Yikes, that might be worse than death. In order to fulfill his promise, he sold his soul to the devil himself. Supposedly, this Devil's Bible contained a complete Latin translation of the Bible and multiple other texts, such as medical formulas and even instructions for performing exorcisms. This book was created using more than 160 animal skins and apparently takes 2 people just to lift it. Although, mysteriously, this book became a bit lighter because 12 pages are actually missing. Rumor has it, these pages contain satanic rituals to summon the devil himself. Of course, there is no way in knowing unless we read it for ourselves, so if any of you hardcore readers out there get a chance to take a peek, let me know in the comments. Coming in at number 9 is the Nazca Lines. Most of us have heard of crop circles before, but what about the Nazca Lines? The Nazca Lines, just like crop circles, are actually named geoglyphs. Now, what is a geoglyph? A geoglyph is a large design produced on the ground and usually formed by clastic rocks, stones, stone fragments, and gravel or earth. The Nazca Lines were first discovered in the 1930s when pilots were flying over the Nazca Desert in southern Peru and came across these massive drawings. The ancient Nazca civilization made up these drawings consisting of animals, humans, and plants around 2,000 years ago. There are said to be over 100 of these drawings spanning a total of 50 square kilometers. And while many can identify who and what created these massive drawings, no one alive actually knows the reason behind them. Scholars theorize that these were massive signs to give incoming sailors directions, or that they were a way to communicate with those above us. Dun dun dun! Here at number 8 we have the Roman dodecahedrons. All over the world for hundreds of years, random stone and bronze objects have been popping up in fields and sometimes even in people's yards. These objects are called the Roman dodecahedrons. These objects have 12 sides with a small circle on each and pegs sticking out of every single corner. Experts have dated these objects all the way back to the 2nd and 3rd centuries CE, but once again, they have no idea of their purpose. Many believe these objects resemble an ancient nautical devices, or were used to sow winter grains or even calibrate water pipes for Roman architects. In the end, all of these are just theories and cannot be told for sure. So maybe go and invest in a metal detector and see what you can find. At number 7 is Bible John, who operated in Glasgow back in 1968 and 69. But what's so baffling about this case, you ask? Well, it's the fact that this guy managed to off 3 people without ever getting caught. All of his victims were brunettes between the ages of 25 and 32. They all crossed paths with their sinister dance partner at the Barlow Land Ballroom, a place for fun and music that turned into a nightmarish crime scheme. But it didn't stop there, folks. This guy was called Bible John because he had a knack for quoting scripture and condemning adultery, especially when he was with his last victim. The police have never been able to pin down his identity, despite one of the most extensive manhunts in history. And what's even more mind-boggling is that some folks even thought Peter Taubin, another convicted serial unaliver, might be Bible John, but nope, he got eliminated as a suspect. And the mystery lingers on. At number 6 is the Freeway Phantom. The Freeway Phantom, a mysterious and deeply unsettling case, has baffled investigators for decades, which takes us on a chilling journey through the mysteries of American crime. This cold-blooded villain, harboring a seething rage against society, committed a series of heinous crimes that terrorized the Washington area. His motive is obscured in a shroud of darkness, which could be rooted in untreated psychological turmoil, perhaps depression, and definitely anger towards women. The Phantom's elusive persona, concealed behind a mask and a vehicle, suggests a methodical approach to his sinister deeds. His knowledge of the region's local stories hints at a connection to the area. The abduction and unaliving of his victims reveal a psychopathic disposition with deep-seated misogyny. The brutality of these crimes, coupled with a military-like precision, has led some to speculate about this person being a Vietnam veteran. At number 5 is the West Mesa unalivings. 11 women, their remains discovered in 2009, buried beneath a dusty New Mexico desert. It's one of those American mysteries that might never be completely unraveled. Originally, people thought it was the work of a serial unaliver, but there's a twist here. Actually, a possible connection to a trafficking ring. An anonymous tip pointed fingers at a suspect from Central America, but it doesn't stop there. Cops even suspected a trafficking ring operating through Texas, preying on people of the night during big events across the Southwest. This complex web of darkness stretches across various states, leaving us with more questions than answers. At number 4 is the Gilio Beach serial unalivings, a spine-tingling mystery that spans nearly 2 decades, casting a shadow over Long Island, New York. Between 96 and 2011, the remains of 11 people were discovered, with the majority being workers of the night who had advertised their services on Craigslist. The grim saga began with the disappearance of Shannon Gilbert, leading to an intensive police search in the vicinity of Ocean Park near Gilio Oak Beach. In December 2010, the remains of the Gilio 4 were unearthed within a quarter mile of each other, only to be followed by the discovery of 6 more sets of remains in March and April of 2011. Now, the cause of the unaliving itself remains disputed, with police proposing accidental drowning, while an independent autopsy suggested possible strangulation. In a startling twist, the arrest of Rex Hauerman in July of 2023 brought some closure to the case, as he was charged in connection with the unalivings of 3 of the Gilio 4 victims, and emerged as the prime suspect in the 4th victim's demise. Yet, the lingering mystery remains. Who else might be involved, and what other horrors lie concealed in the shadows of Gilio Beach? And number 3 is the Oakland County unaliver. Between 76 and 77, 4 young people disappeared without a trace. Their bodies were later discovered, each placed in plain sight along roadways in Oakland County. This gruesome puzzle remains one of America's most unsettling unsolved mysteries. Forensic advancements have shed light on potential suspects, but they've only deepened the enigma. DNA testing indirectly implicated 2 individuals, but the main perpetrator's identity remains hidden. One suspect passed away, and the other is serving a life sentence for unrelated crimes. Even with a DNA profile of the unaliver, no match has emerged. At number 2 is the Doodler. Alright, so let's dive into one of the most unsettling unsolved mysteries in American history. Straight out of California, the Doodler. This unsettling serial unaliver terrorized San Francisco between 74 and 75, committing 6 to 16 unalivings and 3 assaults. What makes this case more chilling is how the Doodler earned his name. See, before brutally impaling his victims, he would sketch them. The victims were all men, and the suspect targeted them after meeting at gay nightclubs, bars, and restaurants. The disturbing patterns of the victims being stabbed in similar locations adds another layer to the mystery. Despite police efforts, the Doodler was never caught. At number 1 is Charlie Chopoff. Now, if you think serial unalivings are the stuff of movies and TV shows, think again. Charlie Chopoff is an unidentified serial unaliver who terrorized the streets of Manhattan from 72 to 73. What makes this case even more unsettling was the gruesome nature of the crimes. See, Chopoff's signature move was you could probably guess or Google it. I wouldn't recommend it. Imagine the fear that gripped the city during those days. Despite a suspect, Erno Sato, confessing to one of the unalivings, he was deemed unfit for trial and sent back to a mental institution, leaving the case open and the mystery unsolved. The question remains, who was Charlie Chopoff? And will we ever uncover the truth behind these horrific crimes?
Coming in at number 10, we have what was before the Big Bang. The common consensus is that there was a massive event at the beginning of time that brought all of the universe into existence, and a bunch of stuff happened, and then humans showed up. I hope you realize that I'm fast-tracking this whole story a little bit. But some of the brightest minds on the planet have been able to use their collective intelligence to pull back the data to the point where the universe erupted from a condensed little sliver of explosion and fired out billions of galaxies across the ever-expanding universe, but everything that we understand about physics doesn't give us any information about what was before. Many scientists have uttered the words, "It doesn't make sense anymore." Man, that must be frustrating to just not be able to crack the code. My speculation is, and I come at this with zero knowledge of how the universe works, but that before the universe started, there was Samuel Jackson. Because that guy's everywhere. He's done like 200 movies. Coming in at number 9, we have dark matter. If you get into the world of science fiction, then you would have for sure heard of some character using dark matter for something, and it's usually very dangerous for whatever reason. And why is that? Well, here's the thing. Scientists still don't know what dark matter is. They have never been able to bottle the stuff and look at it closely, but the universe shows a lot of signs that it does exist. The speculation as to what dark matter is basically a web of particles so plentiful that it holds the universe together. To give give you perspective, what we can see in the universe, the stars, the planets, the moons, all of that only takes up about 5% of the endless void. Now, dark matter is thought to take up 25% of the space. There's speculation that dark matter has a gravitational pull, and that's why people think it props up the universe. Other people think that dark matter is an undiscovered property of gravity. Really, we have no idea what's going on, so when you read a science fiction book and they talk about dark matter, remember that the writer has no idea either. At number 8, we have Why Do We Sleep? Well, because Stone Cold said so. That's a super old reference that probably no one will know, but this has been a question that has baffled scientists for an extremely long time. We know the benefits of sleep. When you sleep, your body repairs itself. Sleep is good for your cognitive function. Sleep helps your brain get in information. I could go on for 20 videos about all the scientific evidence about how important sleep is for your health. In fact, getting better sleep is the easiest and cheapest way to get healthier, but the question still stands. Why? There are other organisms on the planet that never need to sleep, like bullfrogs, who won't fall asleep but they go into a rest state. There's a lot of speculation. Some people think that because our bodies are so much more complex, but they still come from the same genetic soup as a lot of the other things on this planet, our cells can't run something this powerful without taking a break. Other people think that this was some sort of defense mechanism created to wait out predators, but in the end we still don't have the answers.
At number 7, we have the King List. Dating all the way back to the 3rd millennium BCE, this giant slab known as the King List lists all of the Sumerian kings with their respective dynasties, locations, and the times they were in power. This may not seem like much of a mystery to you, but the mystery isn't the list of the Sumerian kings on the slab, but what is actually included in the list of kings. There are mythological events inscribed on the slab, as well as the events of the Great Flood and the tales of Gilgamesh, meaning that the stories from the Old Testament could indeed be true and that the kings included on the list were actually gods or demigods. Hopefully all that power didn't go to their heads. At number 6, we have the Antikythera mechanism. Back in 1900, a group of sponge divers discovered a shipwreck in the Mediterranean dating all the way back to 70 to 60 BCE. These divers salvaged 3 pieces of bronze making up what is now known as the Antikythera mechanism. This shoebox-sized artifact stunned scholars for over a century due to the fact that the object's gears and internal mechanisms were far beyond any of the known Greek tech of the time. Some even believe that this object is proof of ancient aliens' visitations to Earth. Although in the late 20th century, X-rays showed that the object is designed to track astronomical movements and was confirmed later by CT scans that revealed inscriptions for what was basically an ancient computer. While the object's use has now been confirmed, what is still puzzling is the advanced construction and precision of this tool that is believed to be way more advanced than what was available at the time. I don't know. If you ask me, I say aliens. At number 5, we have the stone spheres of Costa Rica. Ever since the 1940s, scientists have been digging up these ancient mysterious spheres in the Dicus Delta of Costa Rica. Originally discovered by agricultural forays by the United Fruit Company, small stone spheres ranging from a few centimeters wide to 2 meters in diameter and weighing over 16 tons have been popping up everywhere in the Dicus Delta. Every single one of these spheres is man-made and made up of an igneous stone known as granodiorite. Many of these stone spheres have been moved to high-profile locations throughout Costa Rica, and some are even now privately owned. Everyone seems to love them for their decoration, but the coolest thing about them is that absolutely no one knows why, how, or who made these strange objects. Seems to be a common theme, huh? At number 4, we have the bog bodies of Northern Europe. Ever since the 18th century, hundreds and hundreds of well-preserved human bodies have been discovered in the peat bogs of Northern Europe. Some of these bodies have been dated all the way back to 8000 BCE. Some of you may be familiar with the famous Toland Man, who was discovered back in 1950 by 2 Danish farmers in a small town in Denmark. The Toland Man is believed to be from the pre-Roman Iron Age of the 3rd century BCE. His body was so well preserved that scientists were able to look at the contents of his stomach to determine where he lived. Now, I know what you're thinking. Dewey, this sounds amazingly gross and cool, but where's the mystery, my dude? Well, I'm glad you asked. All of the bodies that have been found have no explanation as to why they were placed in the bogs, nor why this way of disposal would be utilized. There are only speculations that these people were either sacrifices or social outcasts who were fated to meet their doom. Wow. And I thought high school kids were mean. Coming in at number 3 is the underwater ruins of Japan. Just under the surface off the coast of Yonaguni-jima is Japan's very own Atlantis. First discovered back in 1995, divers and researchers believed the findings to be nothing more than just a series of weird rock formations that included straight lines and right angles. Later, there were researchers that discovered a large stone gateway, carved stairways, and streets to huge vaulting towers. Many believe the underwater mystery to be the fallen city of the Jomon people. Experts believe that the city didn't fall into the sea like other fabled underwater cities, but actually slowly submerged over thousands of years. It is believed that this site could hold secrets and answers to all of the other theorized underwater cities around the world, such as Atlantis. Now, we could continue to theorize, or we could just believe that Aquaman starring Jason Momoa is actually a documentary and he currently does live in the ocean. I could see it. At number 2, we have the Piri Reis map. In 1929, this old map was found in the Sultan's palace in Istanbul, Turkey. A legendary commander of the Ottoman fleet by the name of Piri Reis, who lived from 1465 to 1553, is the author of the map. Reis's map is extremely precise. So precise that it actually includes the continent of Antarctica. But wait, hold the phone. Antarctica wasn't discovered until 1773 by British Captain James Cook. But yet, here is Piri Reis's map showing Antarctica back in 1513. Was Antarctica actually just discovered much earlier than originally thought? Or did James Cook just take credit for someone else's hard work? We might never know. Finally, coming in at number 1 is the infamous Big Daddy Stonehenge. In case you've been living under a prehistoric rock for the last few thousand years, you've probably heard of Stonehenge. Stonehenge is a giant prehistoric monument that is located in England and dates back to 3000 BC. The monument consists of a ring of standing stones all weighing around 25 ton, originally from a quarry located 25 kilometers or 15.53 miles away from the current monument. Not one person knows how these ancient people could have moved these massive stones without the use of a wheel or pulley, or why they were even formed in the first place. Is it an ancient observatory? Healing place? Did ancient aliens create it as a landing pad? We may never actually know.